And we thank you very much for tuning in again to the No Fruit Podcast. And so today, we're going to talk about dreaming big. But what if the first step isn't planning, but it's trusting yourself? Today, we sit down with Gail Showalter to explore how to believe in your own voice. And that is the key to unlocking big goals. We'll talk about it right after this.
Let's talk about love and marriage, the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. No Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
So we thank you very much for tuning in. We have the graceful, we have the magnificent Ms. Gail. And so we want to ask you, Ms. Gail, so many people set big goals and get stuck, not because of lack of vision, but because of lack of trust in themselves. Why do you think self-trust is such a vital and often overlooked part of the process?
Well, I think the bottom line is fear. We fear that we're going to be vulnerable. We fear that we may fall on our face in front of people. We fear that whatever this idea is or this goal is that we have might be look foolish to other people. We don't like that. We don't want to risk that. No. We're not comfortable with that. And we have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And having faith in our visions. I could give you lots of stories because I've been around a while. But, I say I'm the old bird with feathers of wisdom for women. Yeah, and so I've had a lot of visions and I've had a lot of success, but people need to know that I've also fallen on my face. Been embarrassed. Maybe I looked foolish, and that's okay. That's okay, because I took what God gave me and I had maybe an idea and I went forth with it and I pushed it. And I know over the years, some of the projects I've been in, I pushed people to do things they might not have wanted to do, whether it was production at church or something like that. But I look back and I don't have any regrets over any of that. It was all good and it was all fruitful and, came to a place of restoring joy in lives of people. And I think that's what I'm here for, is to take my lessons that I've learned and to give back to the community of believers, mostly, ways that they can go forward, even if it's a tiny little goal they have. In fact, sometimes it's better to start with a small goal and take baby steps towards your final goal. And I have stories about that as well.
Wow. I hear you say, something about being comfortable, and we have to get in a place of being uncomfortable. But in today's society, comfort is something that we're always looking for, whether it's comfortable shoes, comfortable clothes, a comfortable mattress to sleep on. I look around and everywhere that we have, we're always looking for comfort. So you're telling us hey, guys, we need to be uncomfortable. So how do we do that? How do we switch to, feeling more at ease with being uncomfortable?
Well, I've heard, that we're creatures that seek pleasure. We're pleasure seekers. And all the ads you see on TV, whether it's for a mattress, like you said, or, a lazy boy recliner or whatever it is, we want that. And we crave that. And then we get the attitude that we're entitled to that. And I think entitlement is really not a good thing. If you're going to grow spiritually, if you're going to get to a place where you can achieve something, whether it's a simple goal or a big goal, you have to not feel like you're entitled. Like you put something out on the internet and you think you're entitled to get X number of replies and all of these things. No, you're not. No, you're not. I don't know where people get the idea, and in fact, I can go on and on about it. I don't think that God promised us to be comfortable. I don't see that anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere. When I've read it, I haven't read anything about being comfortable in your situation. Now it says, I have learned to be content, as Paul said. But it doesn't say anything about, you should be comfortable today. talk about shoes. They didn't wear any shoes. Sometimes they wore sandals and feet were just dirty, you know?
Yes.
So we need to reevaluate that whole attitude of being comfortable, thinking that we're entitled, thinking if we do this, then this is going to happen. You know, for generations, we taught kids, okay, you get your 4-year degree and everything will be fine.
Right.
Right.
Well, we learned right away that wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have 4-year degrees and they're not doing so great.
Right.
So, you know, it's more to it than that. A lot more to it than that.
So how do we get over fear? Because a lot of time, and I only can speak based off of us raising kids recently, where we have, you know, you have a contest or this, that, and the other, and everyone gets a trophy just for participating, right? You know, and so you don't have that fear of real competition because technically everybody wins. So how do we deal with that in that culture? Because it seems like everybody wins. There is no loser.
Oh boy, you opened a can of worms there. You know, where that attitude came from, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first learned about it, my kids were already grown. My kids have kids, you know,
Mm-hmm.
now. So that wasn't something I dealt with personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that kids should be taught that if there's a winner, there's normally a loser.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's okay to sometimes be the loser.
Yes.
Sometimes you learn more when you're the loser than when you're the winner.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of lessons are really valuable in life. We have 14, 15 grandchildren. And so, I mean, I've got them in all kinds of situations. And I have one, I remember that he had a lot of trouble losing the game, you know, on a team. If the team lost, it really got to him. It took a while for his parents to explain to him, you know, sometimes you're not going to be the winner.
Right.
And in our world, goodness, that's a big lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I could tell you stories though. I mean, oh my goodness. I heard this one story about a swim team. Okay. They were swimming and the kid that was thought he was going to win, didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards he was really angry and he says, well, I should have won.
Yeah.
And he just went on about he should have won, but he didn't win.
Mm.
You know, and there are other attitudes that even in the workplace for grown men and
Yes.
women who think, okay, I've got this degree and I did this and I did that. So you know what? I should get this job, not the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's the reason you didn't get it, because there wasn't any humility involved.
Mm.
And so, I mean, fear, okay, you ask a question, you ask me the question, how do you get rid of the fear? Well, the only way to get rid of fear is to replace it with faith.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way. There is no other way. And most people don't like to be told that you have to allow God to work things out for you without you telling God how to do it.
Right.
Mm.
In other words, he's not your puppet, and you're not the one telling him, this is what I want, and this is how you can do it, and I need it by such and such time. I mean, I've heard a lot of prayers like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of different denominations in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Not bragging on that for sure, but I've tried to find the perfect place, you know?
Yeah.
Which there is no perfect place. But one of the things I learned is to abide in God, to try to reach that place where my will matches his will.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not telling God how to do it.
Mm.
But that's what we want to do. That's what we all want to do. And I've been in churches where that's what they did do. God,
Right.
please do this. You know, well, I haven't seen it happen too often. Not saying it doesn't happen. I've seen lots of wonderful things happen. But most of the time, they weren't my idea.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't me. You know, in fact, my best story is, you can download it on my website. It's about a baby. We were in Russia. Long story. I'll try to make it a little brief. But the long story is we were in Russia, And my husband's a dentist. We were doing dental work on children in orphanages and whatnot. My daughter had just learned that she could not have children. I mean, they had done surgery. There's not any way you're going to have children. Well, she was in a very traumatic place, and she was going to serve as a dental assistant and all this. And we were in an orphanage that we had donated to, and I'd kind of forgotten. This is an example. I had kind of forgotten how much we had donated to this particular orphanage, but the people there didn't forget. And my daughter goes back down the hall because she was crying and she was getting away from the babies because it was making her real emotional.
Yes.
And I started looking for her. And it was an old building, probably one of the oldest cities in the world. And it was real old and little hallways and plywood here and there. And I went into this room that was probably 10 by 10 feet. And there were bassinets made out of plywood. And my daughter was holding this baby that was wrapped up from the head down. They wrap them in cocoons like that. And I had been working in special ed, and I had seen the worst of the worst when it comes to disabilities and babies and stuff. And I saw that baby, and I thought, no. And I saw the look on her face that she wanted this baby. And I'm thinking, this is not going to, and my prayer was, oh, God, you got to do something. This isn't going to work. And you know what? I heard in my spirit, as God is my witness, I heard in my spirit, you keep your hands off this. I have my hands on it. Every time I started to pray about it or worry about it, I kept hearing that message. Now, my daughter usually listened to me. I was real influential in her life. But she made arrangements to bring that baby. Now, you don't go to Russia. You don't go somewhere and bring a baby back. So she and her husband had to get the money. They had to go to Russia. He had to go. 4 months later, they brought that baby home.
Wow.
She's 22 years old. I wish I could show you a picture.
Wow.
It is the biggest blessing in my life. But, I wouldn't have had that blessing if I hadn't listened to the voice within me. Because if I'd had my way, I would have said, this baby is going to be disabled, because she looked like it. She was 4 pounds. She wasn't thriving. It was really bad. And now she's a grown woman. She's beautiful, inside and outside. Just a wonderful Christian girl. And it makes me weep to this day to think, if I'd had my way, if I thought was what was right, but I didn't have my hands on it.
God.
You need to read the story. It's published and it's there on my website. But I can go on and on. I just think people need, if they're afraid, because I was afraid. I was afraid that we were going to have a baby and that my daughter wasn't going to be able to handle this. The baby was going to be deaf and all of these things. I was afraid.
Wow.
And I had to let go of that fear.
Yes.
And let God take it over. And I've had some other answers and some other experiences, but nothing that was that profound. And it was me not getting my way, me not telling God how to do it, but allowing it to be by the Holy Spirit's power. So I didn't mean to preach today.
No, it's fine. It's good. You got amens from over here. Amen, amen. I think that's one of the things that, like you said, in certain denominations, and we've also have gone to different churches as well, sometimes we get into this name it and claim it, mentality.
Yes. I've actually written about that. Yes.
And then that seems to feed the faith, and I think it needs to be the other way around. The faith needs to kind of come first. And then you from the faith you name it and claim it. But a lot of times people kind of get something in their mind and they name it and claim it and then say, by faith, I want these things to happen. God, if it's your will, let it be, so. And like you said, we're not in alignment with God's will. And sometimes we don't hear God's voice and we feel that he's not listening to us, so talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how do we deal with that in reference to some of our goals? Because we set goals and, we think we want these things to happen and it just takes forever for it to happen. And we think God's not hearing us. Yeah.
Well, I believe that that's the case with a lot of prayer. A lot of our prayers, we think we're not being heard. And I think you have to pray rightly. You have to get into the place where you're willing to accept God's perfect will for you. And that may not be something you have in your heart and mind at all. It may be something completely different. And so, yeah, we set goals, but have we taken that goal that we've set and run that through the Spirit? Have we really, or is it mostly an ego goal?
Right.
Something we want to happen. We want to make it happen. And I know I've done that. I've had that. Oh, yeah. And I pushed, and maybe I made something happen, but it didn't flow with the Spirit necessarily. You know, it wasn't really based in the Lord's word and will for my life. I mean, my first marriage, oh my goodness, was definitely not the perfect situation. And I don't think most things are perfect
Right.
in our lives. And I don't think, like we started out earlier, you know, I don't think we're supposed to expect things to all be perfect. But I do think that we need to, when we're making decisions, we need to run it through the Spirit, listen. You know, you can ask for signs. You can ask. I mean, I've done that over the years. My mom used to tell me you shouldn't do that. But sometimes I would say, okay, Lord, if it isn't your will, please stop this or let me know. And I have had that answered. I've had that. Sometimes it was heartbreaking because it wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Right.
But it's like a parent and a child. You know, the parent knows what's best for the child.
Yes.
So you have to have that kind of faith if you want to get past the fear.
Well, I have a question though. How can I do that, especially if I am used to touching something? Because because that Spirit that you keep referring to, the Holy Spirit, you know, God, Jesus, whatever, whoever is listening to us, whatever faith you're walking in, a lot of times we don't know how to deal with something that we don't see, that we don't touch, that someone else hasn't really truly experienced. So how do we overcome that space? Because that's something that we don't, a lot of us are more tangible. Hey, I learn better with my hands. I learn better with my eyes, but they don't understand the real miracles that they see in front of them. So how do you deal with those individuals that's in that place?
Well, I can tell you another story, but honestly, you know, each individual has to reach their own place. I mean, whatever I say here is not going to fit for everybody in your audience.
Right.
If it's a 25-year-old, they're going to be in one place. If it's a 65-year-old, they're going to be in a completely different place.
Right.
Now, and I'll try to make this a little bit briefer, but I had a situation where I was extremely unhappy at work, and I had gotten a master's degree. I thought I was going to get another job. I thought I wasn't going to have to go back to the teaching that I was in, and I was really not happy. And yet I'm under contract, so I have to start school again, and I started school, and I was exhausted. I was a single mom, 3 kids, you know, teaching high school. It was just hard. And so what I did was something I have never done before. Even though I'm a Christian, I had never done this before. I was exhausted every night. As soon as the kids would get in bed, I would fall on my knees next to my bed, and I'd say the same prayer. Oh, God, I don't know why I'm still here, but you do. So please just get me through another day. I'd go to bed every night. For 6 weeks, I did that. On the 6th week, I get a note from my superintendent, see me. I thought, oh dear, I'm in trouble now. I've been complaining too much. He knows, and I'm going to be raked over the collar. You know, I really did. I thought I was in trouble. So I went by his office after school, and I walked in, and he put this big grin on his face, which he does. And I knew I wasn't in trouble. But that was when they recruited me to teach children with visual impairments in 2 school districts. These children were blind Braille readers, and some of them were severely impaired children. Nothing I had ever anticipated in my life. I didn't even know the job existed. So actually what I did was I took a weekend to pray over it. I knew I was going to take it because it was too big of an opportunity to refuse, but I had to go back to school to get the certification to do this. I was the only person in Texas who had ever been able to teach without a certificate to teach these kids. And today, I'm still in touch with 3 of the women
Oh, wow.
that were Braille readers that one of them has a child that's blind now, and one of them has a PhD. And I mean, it was by far the most rewarding professional experience I ever had teaching a child to read Braille. And so, I mean, I can tell some more stories if you want. They're all in the book. I just think whenever you say that, what do you do if you can't put your hand on it? You have to reach out for something you can't touch. You can't touch it.
Yeah.
And my husband has trouble with that. He has a lot of trouble with that. He's very scientific, So I do understand that some people have that until they have their own experience. It's really hard for them. And I don't expect every day to be a miracle fixing everything. I know it's not like that.
Right.
I don't think it was like that for the apostles or anybody. Every day wasn't a great day.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't. Some of them. And I think that's something that because of the world, again, we live in, because of social media, we see it all day, every day, and we want what the next person has. We're envious, we're gluttonous, we're jealous, all these pieces, and not understanding that, hey, what God has for me is for me. And what he has for you is for you, and allow me to rejoice in what God has blessed you with, because he's going to reward me in another way, anyway. So I think those are the type of things that we don't always understand, and we don't always accept and be happy for the person next to us.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's the greatest joy, because you want to help somebody else and you want them to be happy along the way with it. So I think those are some of the things that we kind of miss in life today.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot of things we miss with all of the computerized social media, everything, everybody on their phones every minute. There's a lot that we miss, but we don't really realize we're missing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing. Look, these weren't stories. These were testimonies. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us and enlightening us. Can you please let everyone know where they can find your book that you're referring to, and any other these other testimonies that you'd like to share?
Well, the book is called Living, Learning, Loving, and it's full of stories and it's testimonies, and it's a great book for study or for a group. And it can be purchased. It can be purchased almost anywhere: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Walmart even. But it helps me if you purchase it at Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And you can order it in advance. It'll come out in September, but you can pre-order, which also helps me a lot. And it's being published by Morgan James in their faith department. And you can reach me at gailshowalter.com. The organization and nonprofit I have for single mothers is called Single Moms Empowered. And we help moms get through college so they can get a degree that brings them to work, helps them get a really good job. That's what is happening. We've got over 10 million single moms in the United States now, and a third of them are living in poverty. So we really need to look at that situation. That's one of my passions, is because I was a single mom for 16 years, and it was a long haul.
Wow.
Well, all of that information will certainly be in the show notes. So all of you who are listening, you can certainly just look at the show notes, and you'll be able to just link directly to Gail through all of those links that we'll have there in the show notes. So as we're winding this show down, Miss Gail, we have one more question that's been kind of in the back of our minds since we first met. If you could sing a duet with anyone in the world, living or deceased, who would you sing that duet with?
Ooh. There's so many names going through my mind. I'm just going to say Reba McEntire.
Oh yes,
nice.
Reba, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet her, and I just think she's a single mom. I think she's
Yes.
a really neat person.
Nice. Nice.
Yes.
That's funny.
Great.
Nice. But we thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
No
Yes,
problem.
it's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. And of course, y'all, thank y'all very much for listening to the No Fruit Podcast. Again, all of Miss Gail's information will be in the show notes. So if you're walking, running, jogging, snowboarding, skydiving, you'll be able to come back and get the information. And we'll talk to you just a little bit later.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the No Fruit Podcast, where we bring you fruitful conversations, ripened wisdom, and love that's deeply rooted. We hope today's discussion left you feeling uplifted, encouraged, and ready to take on life's journey with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration in their day. You can catch up on past episodes, send us your thoughts, or learn more about us on social media. Until next time, stay rooted in love, and remember, every seed you plant today shapes the fruit of tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you next time.